Okay, so when we think about ancient civilizations on the Nile, one name just pops into everyone's head, right? Egypt. The pyramids, the pharaohs, it's all legendary. But here's the thing, just south of Egypt, along those same fertile riverbanks in what's now Sudan, another incredible power rose up, one that would thrive, build its own pyramids, and, get this, eventually turn the tables on its super famous neighbor.
I mean, that sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? The whole idea that the mighty Egyptian empire, a cornerstone of the ancient world, could be conquered and actually ruled by a rival from the south? Well, for over 100 years, that is exactly what happened.
We are talking about the Kingdom of Kush, and for way too long, it was just written off as like a cheap copy of Egypt, some secondary state out on the fringes. But Kush was an absolute powerhouse in its own right, with a totally unique culture and a history that's just as complex and fascinating as any other in the ancient world. You see, for centuries, the main story we had about Kush was written by its rivals, the Egyptians and the Romans. But as this quote points out, modern archaeology is literally digging up a completely different story. It's revealing this incredibly sophisticated society that totally mastered industry, trade, and warfare. So, to really get Kush, we've got to go back way, way back, long before it conquered Egypt. This kingdom didn't just pop up out of nowhere. No, its roots in the Nubian soil are incredibly deep, really ancient, and completely independent. Just look at this timeline. It shows you just how ancient this place is. I mean, as far back as 7500 BC, you had the Nabta Playa civilization creating astronomical devices. We're talking thousands of years before Stonehenge. Then by 2500 BC, the Kerma culture was a serious major rival to Egypt. And yeah, there was a period of Egyptian colonization, but after Egypt started to decline, Kush bounces right back around 1070 BC, centered at its capital, Napata, ready to take the stage for its biggest moment yet. And that brings us to the most incredible chapter in this entire story. This is the moment that completely flips the whole power dynamic of the ancient Nile Valley right on its head. This is where the student becomes the master. Over 100 years, for more than a century, Kushite kings sat on the throne of Egypt as its undisputed pharaohs. It's wild. In the 8th century BC, a king named Kashta and his successor Pai marched their armies north. And they weren't just there to raid. No, they were there to conquer and to unify a totally fractured Egypt under their rule. And they didn't just conquer Egypt. Rulers like Pa and the Great Taharka saw themselves as revitalizers. They truly believed they were bringing back traditional Egyptian values that had been lost. They unified the whole kingdom, they launched these massive construction projects, restored ancient temples, and this is my favorite part, they revived the tradition of building pyramids, something that Egyptians themselves had given up on centuries earlier. So what ended this incredible era? It wasn't some Egyptian revolt. Nope. It took the full might of another rising superpower, the Neo-Assyrian Empire. In a series of just brutal invasions in the mid-7th century BC, Assyrian kings with their giant armies pushed the Kushite forces completely out of Egypt and back south into their Nubian homeland. But if you're thinking, oh, so being forced out of Egypt was the end for Kush, you would be so wrong. In fact, what looked like a major setback actually sparked a new beginning. The kingdom adapted, it shifted its center of power, and it entered what many people consider its true golden age. They moved their capital way further south, to a city called Meroe. And this was a genius strategic move. Meroe was located in this perfect spot, rich in iron ore and hardwood forests, and it was right at the crossroads of these super important trade routes connecting Central Africa to the Red Sea and the rest of the world. And in Meroe, the Kushite culture just came into its own. It became an iron-producing powerhouse, one of the most important in the ancient world. They even developed their own unique writing system, the Meroic script, which, by the way, we're still trying to fully decipher today. The kingdom was often led by these powerful warrior queens they called kandakas, and they kept on building pyramids, hundreds of them, with these really cool steep sides that you can still see all over the landscape today. And make no mistake, Kush was no fading power. When the Roman Empire came in and took over Egypt, Kush went toe-to-toe with them. This quote here from the Greek historian Strabo, it describes a Kushite army led by a Kandake named Aminarenes launching this huge, successful raid deep into Roman territory.
And for the ultimate symbol of their defiance, check this out. Archaeologists in Meroe found this magnificent bronze head of the Emperor Augustus, Rome's first and greatest emperor. It was probably looted during that raid and then buried on purpose under the steps of a Kushite temple. Just think about that, so that every single person who walked in would be symbolically stepping on the head of the Roman emperor. What an incredible political statement.
But like all great ancient empires, the story of Kush did eventually come to an end. So what finally brought this formidable kingdom down?
Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a perfect storm of factors. The climate got worse, which made farming way harder. The key trade routes started to shift away from the Nile, which basically crippled their economy. And on top of all that, they faced more and more attacks from their neighbors, like the rising kingdom of Aksum. By the mid-4th century AD, the once mighty kingdom of Kush had just faded away. Its amazing cities were abandoned and swallowed by the desert sands, and its history, locked away in a script we still can't even fully read, was almost forgotten. This great civilization that once ruled Egypt just returned to the shadows, overshadowed once again by its northern neighbor in the history books. And all of this leaves us with one last, really provocative thought. The story of Kush proves that history has all these hidden depths. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other great stories, what other powerful empires and forgotten kings and queens are still out there, just waiting in the shadows for us to find them?